Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Ventures Podcast. You know, in previous episodes recently, we've talked about the formation of a DAO that is focused on training Web3 product managers. And a DAO stands for a decentralized autonomous organization. And part of what we're doing, even as part of our training, is just being very transparent about the steps we're taking to form this DAO, why we're doing a DAO, how we're going to implement it, why it's significant that having a public and visible treasury that can be voted upon about how to allocate funds. That we talk about that in this episode. We also talk about why it's extremely innovative and important that doing proposals in a DAO that can directly move funds to a smart contract is significant. So we talk about these different terms, and this episode was actually originally intended just to be internally consumed by the DAO, but I got permission from everyone involved in this episode that we can go ahead and just share it publicly. So Spencer is the DAO expert. He's been on previous shows here before. I'll link to those in the show notes. And then David and Walter and Lutz and Priya are also, and Priya comes in later in the episode, they're also chime in with questions. So this is a fun discussion. Glad to be able to share it with you. If you're watching, you can also listen anywhere that you get your podcasts. You can just search for Ventures and it should show up. And if you're listening, you can also watch by visiting wclittle.com, and there you'll see links to different topics that we talk about today and other episodes as well. So with that, please enjoy this wide-ranging conversation about the very beginning steps of why we're forming this DAO. Okay, hello everybody. My name is Will. I am interested in starting a DAO, and I don't know how to do it. So this is meant to be a video that we are going to essentially use, I think, as a training module, as one of a set of videos and writings to help somebody who is hearing all about DAOs, and definitely in 2022, you're going to hear a ton about DAOs. To help somebody, and I'm going to use myself as a guinea pig because I've never started a DAO, but I've started multiple companies and I've helped bring many products to life. And so where we're at now is I've had an idea for a thing I want to exist in the world. And the thing that I want to exist in the world is a organization of people that consist of subject matter experts to train Web3 product managers. And not everybody knows what a Web3 product manager is. Web3, we're not going to define that here. We're going to assume that you kind of know what Web3 is. Product managers are people who are extraordinary human beings who understand empathetically how to bring experiences to life so that they are delightful, easy, actually solve a problem, et cetera, et cetera. That is severely lacking in Web3 right now. A lot of developers out there learning how to build on all these protocols, a lot of developers building the protocols, but I think that there's a gap, and I've had some confirmation from others in our network that there is a gap around training people who are experienced product managers to rapidly get up to speed on Web3 so that we can effectively build products and services, have people that can lead teams of designers and engineers and other Web3 experts to actually move the needle to bring these products to life. So this video is about how to form a DAO. Why are we forming a DAO? And this is going to be kind of raw. We're coming into it intentionally a bit without a lot of setup. And I will refer you to other podcasts I've done with Spencer to get to know him more holistically. But Spencer, would you mind just doing a quick 20-second intro so that people watching the video knew who you are and why we're having this conversation?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Spencer. I've been working full time in the DAO space for the various DAOs for about 15 months. One of those is a Web3 product development co-op structured as a DAO called Guild. Another is an organization called DAOHaus, which builds, maintains, and innovates on DAO tooling in particular. DAOHaus is the home for purpose-driven community DAOs. It's kind of a no-code way to launch or summon a DAO and participate in the DAO.
Sweet. All right. So we have Walter, Luce, and David here. They may chime in with questions. This video is intended for other people in the cohort. So we will do a more proper introductions with everybody. Obviously, you can read in the Discord about people's backgrounds, and we can chime in from there. So here's where we're at. I basically did a LinkedIn post. It didn't even do it on Twitter, just on LinkedIn. Hey, I'm interested in doing a cohort of people who want to get up to speed to be Web3 product managers. That resulted in a good set of folks. I did a very light amount of just making sure that people are actually product managers. Invited those people into a Discord. This is literally the last 3-4 days here. Those people have now started the introductions. We have some momentum. This is really the first video around, okay, let's ask ourselves the questions now. Is this the appropriate time to actually form a on-chain DAO? And this is where I'm going to tee it over to Spencer. Spencer, I feel like we have a lot of people interested. I feel like we have a broad enough network. I feel people are like, yes, I resonate with that idea. I want this thing to exist. I want a high signal to noise, rapid curriculum to get experienced product managers up to speed on Web3. We have a Discord. We're starting to communicate. What do we do now?
So the first question to get at is why, and kind of what, in a sense. So the reason to have a DAO is to take collective action.
Yeah.
To do things together. So if you have and actually it's very specific that it really involves common resources. So resources, assets, tangible assets that you share control of, and taking collective action to like leveraging those assets to do something towards a common purpose. That is basically what a DAO can do in a way that no other organizational structure can. So there's legitimate reasons to like start a DAO and see what happens, and not necessarily establish a purpose to begin with, and not have to answer that question, even if only to just experiment. That's totally great. Mm-hmm. But at the same, like, if you do that, then you need to put you need to have some common resources that you put into play. So I think there's two paths to go. One is figure out the common purpose, what you want to spend, what do you want to accomplish together. So that's one thing, and you can do that without putting in assets into the DAO treasury, which we can talk about in a little bit.
Okay.
Or you can put assets into the DAO treasury that are controlled by everybody in the DAO collectively, and not necessarily define specifically what the purpose is. Kind of just let things happen. Let people come up with ideas, create proposals for how to spend the funds collectively, and kind of iterate towards what your common purpose is. Or you could do both, right? Like those are not mutually exclusive.
So what's stopping us from just doing this internally on a web, like literally building consensus on Discord, having a channel that's like voting, throwing a thread on and say upvote or downvote, and then we're gonna do what that says, right? What is the impetus, the warrant to move this on chain?
So I guess it highly depends on what it is you're going to do. If you are going to all read a book and you're kind of voting on what the book is going to be, there's zero reason to do that on chain if that's all you're doing. If you are going to allocate resources towards something, then one way to do it would be like within a traditional company structure where the executive controls the bank account and everybody votes on what to do, like in a co-op kind of structure.
Yeah.
And then the executive says, "Okay, great. I'll take that result, and I'll go take the money out of the bank account and send it over to wherever we agreed to send it." Um, Companies all over the world do that all the time.
Right.
But what the challenge is, or the where DAOs can make a difference, is that there is that the fact that there's one executive who has
Yeah.
executive control over the funds fundamentally changes everybody's relationship to what's going on.
Yeah.
That person, even if they allow other people to be involved in the decision, still have fundamental power over what happens. They could just not agree to follow the advice of the people they listen to, and then the whole thing falls apart. So, but in a DAO where everybody is collectively sharing in the actual execution of the decision that they make, then everybody has truly has shared ownership of over what they're doing, and you go from a hierarchical kind of executive sort of structure to a flat shared, um, much more cooperative structure that really changes the way that people engage with the work that they're doing in the community that they're part of.
Is this so? I'll get to David in a second here. Is this so? I've started multiple companies where I've been that person that has opened the bank account, got the LLC or the C corp in place, recruited a team, figured out with the attorneys how we're gonna split up the cap table, recruited investors, et cetera, et cetera. What I'm intrigued about this is I'm not interested in doing it the old school way. What I'm interested in doing is casting a compelling vision that people can get behind. Yes, we need more experienced Web3 PMs, and having an infrastructure in place where we can put Treasury. I mean, this would literally be on, sounds like XDAI if we went with DAOHaus, right? What is the currency that would be in our Treasury?
It could be anything. Any like
Stablecoin?
Could be a stable coin. Could be Ether of some form. It could
Okay.
be wrapped Bitcoin if you really wanted to.
But it'd have to be a
Um,
cryptocurrency.
Cryptocurrency, yes.
Okay. All right. So now this is the key thing, and then David, I'm going to hand it to you. Is we vote on things on chain. It's clear that initiatives, proposals have passed or not passed. If a proposal has passed and we need to hire somebody, like we need to allocate some of our treasury, let's say to an administrator or to teachers that are administering the curriculum. And how do we do that? Did we see that they have an address and then everybody agrees? Like, how does the actual money from the treasury have accountability that it's going to that teacher to provide that service?
Well, so there's a couple parts to what you asked. The first part is how do we be sure that it is going to the right place, or that it actually goes to that place?
Mm-hmm.
The second part is how do we ensure that the teacher does the right thing?
Yeah.
That accountability is more of a challenge. But I'll go to the first part first.
Okay.
And I'll actually change a little bit about what you said, where you said there will be decision reached about whether to hire somebody, and then there will be a sending of funds to that person. In a DAO, those can be exactly one and the same.
Cool.
So the only thing that you need to do in an actual DAO action, so an on-chain action, is the sending of the funds. So you could decide off-chain, informally, socially, with whatever decision-making process that you want, whether or not to hire somebody. So like we could say, we have rough consensus that we need to hire somebody to do X, Y, Z. And we might even come to an agreement that we want to hire Tom over there to do X, Y, Z. The only thing we need to do on chain is execute the transfer, and that transfer is a proposal of its own. So we would create a proposal that says,
oh, cool, I got it.
Inside the proposal is,
that's awesome.
Send money over here. Is actually not send money over here, but is the actual sending of the money over there.
That's cool. So I don't have to.
If we all are voting or pass the whatever voting threshold we maintain, if we all collectively vote yes, then that action is executed as part of the proposal.
That's okay. That sounds obvious saying it out loud now, but for some reason that didn't click into my head before that. David,
because it doesn't exist anywhere else.
David, thanks for your patience.
Yeah, no problem at all. I'm going to ask a question, and you can tell me if this is kind of the right question. So the short version is, either you or Will use the example of traditional organization. CEO has a power relationship. The CEO has the ability to, let's say, cut a check or sign a check, right? Most organizations I'm familiar with, there's at least 2 or 3 people. It's usually the CEO, the CFO, and maybe one other person. So, but those people have power, right? They have the ability in the system to cut a check, disperse funds that other people in the organization don't, even if those other people are part of dialogues, even if those other people can vote on should we do this, etc. So your point about a power relationship, I get it. How exactly does that change in a DAO? And what I mean is, does everybody have the ability to cut a check? Like, I get what you're saying, that everybody votes and it's more of like a collectivist action, but there's still, at some point, there is still money in and money out, and some person or some group of people are pressing a button or pulling a lever that's making that happen. So,
right, that's the smart contract that gets executed based on everybody voting. If it passes majority, it automatically happens. Is that what you're saying, Spencer?
Right. So this is what's fundamentally different and like uniquely possible with smart contracts and with DAO smart contracts. Well, with smart contracts in general, DAOs are a subset of that, where think of it like a multi-signature kind of thing. So you might have like from a legal perspective, you could have a legal contract that says the money from this account can only go over to that account if 11 of the 20 people that are on this list sign their name next to yes. So no one of those people would have the ability to move the funds. Not even 10 of the people would have the ability to move the funds. Only 11 together could do it. That still relies on the legal system. You could bribe the bank teller or whatever, right? But we can make those like security assumptions even more watertight with a smart contract and say that only if a majority of the people that are on this list that are involved in this DAO agree to do this, does it actually happen? So no single person can take any actions with the common resources.
So briefly, let me say that back, and then I see that Buzz has a hand raised, so I'm happy to pass the mic. Saying that back, what I'm hearing is the execution authority is distributed in such a way that nobody has all of it, but everybody has a piece of it. And that's why you need essentially a quorum of whatever you define that threshold to be to execute on whatever it is you're trying to execute on. Is that the basic idea?
Exactly. There's many ways to define the quorum and how that works, but that's the basic idea. Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. Thanks for answering that. Let's over to you or to Will.
Yeah, Luz, go ahead.
Yep. So the and I think I'm also kind of in the same vein of just trying to clarify some language around that, especially again, super new, and even just kind of differentiating the terms on-chain and off-chain decision making. I'm a visual learner and I need some metaphors for this. So I'm trying to if I'm understanding this correctly, like, and I think kind of related to David's question, as we're thinking about off-chain decisions, that's like, if we were to use like a coding metaphor, that's where you're building all of your code base, all of the rules around that. And then the on-chain decision is essentially like the commit, that this is the script that runs when we make that decision based off of these rules that we've kind of established outside. Is that, it's kind of a crude metaphor, I know.
No, but that's right.
I need some broad strokes.
Basically, off-chain means we could do it all on Discord. A ton of trust would be on like me or whatever small set of executives that we would do what we say we're going to do. We're going to move money. We're going to handle this appropriately, et cetera, et cetera. The beauty of blockchains is that it's now in code. If the majority of people, depending on how we write the consensus, if the majority of people do it, it's going to happen. people don't need to trust me or anybody else. It's just you're trusting the blockchain, you're trusting the smart contract, and you know based on the rules that if a majority of people vote, it's going to happen, right? Anything you add to that, Spencer?
Yeah. I think something that is a little bit subtle, but is an important distinction is on chain is where your common resources live, or at least the ones that are truly common resources.
Mhm.
So if you're like the crypto assets, basically, or whatever is the crypto assets even representing something else, that's where the common resources live. Anything else can and should be done off chain. So if and actually the only thing that needs to be done on chain is execution of actions.
Okay.
Actually fundamentally making a change to the state of the world.
Now, if I'm
yeah.
a teacher in the DAO, I'm now putting myself in that position. I'm now going to need to trust, like if my payment for my salary is based on people having to vote and actually execute a smart contract, am I going to get nervous about that? How can you speak to that a little bit?
Sure. Yeah, you might get nervous about it. There are other ways to set up compensation in
Okay.
DAOs other than just at the full mercy of the entire organization.
And how can you
if you did it that way, you might be right to be nervous.
Okay. What's the best practice way to pay somebody working to add value in the DAO equivalent of an employee?
Well, there's lots of ways, and people are experimenting quite heavily with this stuff.
Uh-huh.
One way is to, which is a bit of a like bit of a trip, is to stream funds to somebody, so that they're constantly receiving every second or whatever an incremental amount of funds. That is a very Web3 native thing that you can do with protocols like Superfluid or Sablier.
Wow.
Another way is to set aside some amount of funds that are dedicated towards somebody, which is typically more of a mutual commitment. Like that person has to commit to doing work over a certain amount of time. The DAO will then commit to paying them over a certain amount of time by actually carving out those funds and putting them in a place where the DAO can't revoke them. And there's lots of gradations of the extremes.
So could you do something like, okay, we're going to vote on teacher ABC are going to administer curriculum X, and person Y is responsible for making sure that they did it. And so we're basically trusting person Y to allocate this capital. Is that something, as an example of something you would vote on chain, and then person Y would administer funds in the background somehow? Or am I overcomplicating that?
You could do that.
You could. Okay. And then person Y would literally send funds from a wallet. And this would be, we're all dealing in cryptocurrencies here, right?
Probably what you would do is if you wanted to delegate control to, or like responsibility to an individual person, you would send the funds from the DAO to a dedicated smart contract.
Yeah.
That the only thing that person whose responsibility you're delegating to could do is either send the funds back to the DAO or send them over to the person. Yeah.
Got it. That's cool. Okay. But so then the DAO gives authority to that person to execute the smart contract either back and then I guess you could write it such that if at any point the DAO wanted to just pull those funds back, they could based on majority vote. Like I think I'd
do that. You could, instead of assigning responsibility to one person, you could assign it to a subcommittee, and then it's more people. And like they all have to agree, or like a quorum of them has to agree.
This is cool.
Any combination of setting of responsibility versus spreading out over multiple people or many people is possible as well.
Now, if I were a regulator, right, if I were a jurisdiction, I don't want these DAOs creating all these 1099 or employee relationships without actually paying their taxes, right? So the DAO would have to be responsible based on the jurisdictions they're in to do the appropriate reporting Is that how these DAOs are playing ball with legal systems?
No comment, and also no. Um,
Okay.
some I think probably are, but mostly, well, I won't say mostly, but what a lot of people are starting to do is join sort of employment collectives
Got it.
where they can basically turn all of their 1099 income from lots of different places into a single W-2 by creating a personal LLC and having everything flow through that.
Got it. Okay.
The leading one of those is called Opolis, by the way, if you're curious. Opolis. That's what I use. And the advantage there is, one, it simplifies the tax stuff while allowing me to comply with tax law, and it also limits my liability if any of the DAOs that I'm a part of are not incorporated and then would otherwise be deemed general partnerships. If I didn't have my own LLC that was protecting me, then I would potentially be mutually liable with everybody else that was in the DAO for all of their activities.
Okay, so that's, you sent over the Raid Guild Delaware LLC operating agreement. So at a certain point, probably sooner than later, we'd want to go ahead and execute that. Now, does that mean, this raises all kinds of interesting questions, right? Is there insurance, right? Like the equivalent of DEO or director D&O insurance? Is there, can you speak a little bit about, these are like the nuts and bolts, which is kind of the purpose of this meeting. It's just like, okay, like literally, what are we going to do? I don't know if you can speak to that. Yeah.
Be as detailed as you can, because I'm super interested about this part.
Yeah.
If you can.
We are starting to enter the area that I have no fucking clue.
Okay. Okay.
I'm actually on the board of stewards, which is kind of like the representative of the commons, like proto DAO thing for Opolis. I do know that Opolis has D&O insurance for that group as well as some others. I am not aware of other DAOs that have that or have.
Okay, we have crypto lawyers, and in fact, we even have an attorney in our alpha cohort. So we can take that offline. We'll probably have a separate Zoom call with the legal folks probably, and record that and share that, which they may or may not be comfortable with. So we'll see how this goes down. The whole point is just transparency, right? Like what's going down, how are we doing this? I actually think what we've already covered is super, super interesting. It helps me understand, as somebody that has started multiple traditional companies, how the DAO is different. This is cool. All right. Priya, welcome.
Hi.
You want to
sorry, I'm late.
No problem. You want to say a 10-second introduction, and then if you any questions to add on this, and we're going to end this in about 4 minutes.
Yeah, I'm Priya, and I work in investment banking for 12 good years. I think what interests me about crypto is, how some of the DeFi aspects are going to replace banking, or the use cases in finance in particular. I've also worked, I also started a startup right after banking in EdTech, and I would be interested in use cases in the era of EdTech too. One of the questions I had, I just heard part of the conversation, is like, it seems like this is very consensus, like the real use case for DAO seems to be where you want to build a consensus-based corporation. And like you said, like not everything needs to be voted by everyone, and not everyone has the time to want to vote on everything. So
right.
What kind of use case would be best suited for something like this?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that last part? What kind of use case would be best suited for a DAO?
For a consensus, for a DAO.
Maybe I'll step back a little bit, and there's definitely a misconception even within the Web3 ecosystem about voting in DAOs. There's no requirement that everybody in a DAO must vote on every decision that the DAO makes. There's all sorts of delegation capabilities and other ways to limit the coordination overhead, basically, of the organization. So, and there's lots of basically like a full spectrum or like multiple dimensions spectrums on each of like how to handle decision making and voting and execution of actions without necessarily having to involve everybody in the DAO. So if the question is what type of organizations are best structured as DAOs, you're going to get a very biased answer from me, which is most. I've like fully bought into the power of what DAOs can do relative to other structures. But the reason I say that is I get, well, maybe the type of organizations that, the easier question is the type of organizations that don't work as DAOs are the ones probably that need to take very fast and yet also very high value actions, like instantaneously. Those probably don't work as DAOs, because you either need to have like explicit coordination around consensus about what to do, which takes a lot of time, or you need to delegate stuff to a single person or like small group of people to do it quickly, and then delegating high amounts of value is very risky. Or you need to do it in a more mechanistic way, like Bitcoin and Ethereum, I think definitely count as DAOs, but they are DAOs that don't require explicit coordination. It's more implicit. Like I, as a member, as somebody who's running an Ethereum node, I'm not interacting explicitly with other people. I'm just going off of my own incentives, what my own node software does. But even that has serious efficiency and kind of performance trade-offs. So where you need to move very quickly with high value actions probably doesn't make sense for a DAO, but most other things have a lot to benefit from the non-hierarchical structure that DAOs, in my opinion, uniquely enable.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and do 15-second takeaways, and then we're going to end this for now. For me, big takeaway was that instead of forming traditional companies where a small number of people have to be trusted to move money around and do the things, now we can have an infrastructure with transparency on smart contracts to form subcommittees, do the voting, and see that money is going from point A to point B. It's DeFi at work. That's a big takeaway for me. Anybody else want to do a takeaway?
I think there is a business opportunity around DAOs and tax compliance.
I think you are right.
I know the difference between off-chain and on-chain decision making now.
Boom.
I also, my takeaway is that I think we need some speculative fiction to explain this further.
I like the way you think. We will go ahead and share this with the cohort, and we'll go from there. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
All right, a couple quick things before you go. Number one, I have a general newsletter where I write about technology and startups and health science and teaching people to code. And I write about a variety of different subjects that we talk about on this show. So if you go to wclittle.com, there you'll be able to subscribe, and you'll also be able to subscribe to particular topics. If you're just interested in one or a few of them, you'll be notified right when I publish new content in those areas. Number two, my partners and I at Proto Ventures have a portfolio company called Startup Rocket. If you go to startuprocket.com, there you'll be able to receive coaching guides and customize an operations framework for you and your team and your advisors to be on the same page in terms of what is the appropriate next step for you and your entrepreneurial journey. And finally, if you wouldn't mind leaving a review anywhere that you have listened to this podcast or watched this podcast, it would be super helpful to help those who might be interested in consuming this content as well. Thank you.